Welcome to another episode of Erik Whiskey Studies, and in this video, going to talk about milling barley. And while I'm going over my notes, going to have a wee dram of the Glenallachie 15-year-old Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. All right, so in order to extract fermentable sugar, the malted barley needs to be milled and turned into grist. There are two basic types of mills: roller mills and the rarely used hammer mill. Two of the most well-known roller mills are the Porteous Mill and the rarer Robert Bobby Mill. Some newer distilleries such as Nickneen and Ballindallack use a modern malt mill by Alan Ruddock Engineering. Customized to suit a distillery's requirements, these low-noise, precision-adjustable mills are available in a combination of either 2, 4, or 6-roll configurations. The AR 2000 series, which has a 2, 4, or 6-roll configuration, has a milling capacity of up to 3 tons per hour, while the AR 3000 series, which has a 4 or 6-roll configuration, can process up to an incredible 10 tons per hour. Inside the mill, 2 sets of rollers crush the grain. The first pair of rollers crack open the grains, and then the second pair, which are adjustable, grind the grist into the consistency best suited to the distiller's mash tun. The consistency of the grist is assessed by separating and measuring the 3 component parts of the grist. The optimum consistency for most distillers is about 20% husk, that is coarse, 70% grits, also known as hearts or middles, at medium, and 10% flour, which is fine. However, some prefer 15% husk, 80% grits, and 5% flour. So I spent a day working at Ballindallack Distillery, and they had to better fine-tune their mill in order to get the right ratios. So these are general numbers and not exact numbers. If you're taking a test for an exam, these are probably the numbers you're going to. So just remember 70, 20, and 10 for your percentages breakdown. But just keep in mind, these are round numbers, and some mills may need to make some finer adjustments in order to get the composition right. The basic point is your composition, or the breakdown, or the percentages of the grits, flour, and husk is going to have an impact on the mash tun, and you may get blockage, you may get clogging, depending on the consistency of the grist. So that to kind of adjust it a little bit. It is important that the consistency of the grist is correct for maximum extraction of fermentable sugars during the mashing process. If the grist has been milled too finely, then water will not pick up soluble sugars, while if it is too coarse, the water will run through. And at Ballindallack Distillery, the bin that the grist is in, while it's being sifted into the mash tun, so hot water's coming through, sparge from the previous mash. They actually had to have like a big stick and manually sort of keep it moving around the grist, because it would start to sort of clog. It would stick together. And so if you were to look at, at a handful of the grist, you would see the granule size would sort of vary. So you can imagine, and they couldn't quite figure out exactly what the cause was. There's a number of different reasons why it could clog. I was suggesting it could be the moisture content, the humidity in the air, and my recommendation was, I gotta make a recommendation to the professionals, but I said, hey, take a bucket, fill up the bucket from 3 different mashes and weigh it. And if you have 3 different buckets, same size bucket, filled to the top, and you have different weights, then that additional weight is probably from the water. You probably got an additional content of water there. Also, if you could probably just feel it, how well, just take a clump of it in your hand and just squeeze it really hard. Does the clump stick together really, really, really well? Or does it quickly fall apart? Think about it. You go to the beach, right? Your sand closer to the water has more moisture content. It's going to be heavier, and when you hold it, it's going to stay firmly together. Whereas The sand away from the ocean is going to crumble, right? So if you want a sand castle, what do you need? You need water. You can use it in order to hold the sand together. Anyhow, it was interesting just to see that what you read in a textbook, it makes it sound so simple when actually it requires a lot of knowledge and a lot of experimentation to get the percentages just right. And the smaller the distillery, such as Ballandalak, they're still working on getting the details, find out. But the end result is I found Ballandalak to be just really killer whiskey. The consistency of the grist is tested using a wooden shuttle box, within which are 3 layers separated by 2 sieves, each with progressively finer mesh. Grist is placed on the top layer of the box with the larger mesh base. The box is closed and shaken from side to side, hence the name shuttle box. When the box is opened, the husk will be trapped on the top layer, grits in the middle layer, and flour on the bottom of the box. Each part is then weighed and the percentage consistency calculated. The mill rollers will then be adjusted accordingly to produce finer or coarser grist. But that's not the only type of mill out there. And a lot of the distilleries, you'll see the Porteous or the Bobby Mill, and you hear the whole story of that, created so well that they basically went out of business. And there's this one guy who's the only person who goes around upkeeping them. They were installed in the 1960s or earlier. And so, you get this whole story about it. But some of the newer distilleries, I noticed, such as Torvig and Ballandalak, are using a more modern mill machine, which basically just looked like a medium to small size red box with a couple dials on it. The hammer mill. Whereas a roller mill uses 2 sets of rollers running at different speeds, the first set to crack open the barley and the second to crush the barley into grist, a hammer mill pulverizes aggregate barley into smaller pieces by the repeated blows of small hammers. A hammer mill is essentially a steel drum containing a vertical or horizontal rotating shaft or drum on which hammers are mounted. The hammers are free to swing on the ends of the cross or fixed to the center rotor. The rotor is run at a high speed inside the drum while material is fed into the hopper. The barley is impacted by the hammer bars and is thereby shredded and expelled through the screens in the drums of a selected size. Malted barley is crushed in a hammer mill to create as fine a flour as possible. The basic theory is that the finer the flour, the easier it is for the malt enzymes to access the carbohydrates and convert them into shorter chain fermentable sugars that the yeast can process. 2 malt distilleries in Scotland use a hammer mill. The first was Teenanick Distillery, located in Alness, and the other is Inchdarney Distillery in Fife. As we read on their website, while whiskey distillers traditionally use roller mills, Inchdarney Distillery instead employs a hammer mill, which almost pulverizes the grain and allows it to pass through a metal sieve at the bottom of the mill. The conversion from starch to sugar begins in our mash conversion vessel before being passed into the mash filter. The end result is a clearer wort and a finer whiskey. Alrighty, so that's our brief look at milling barley. In our next video, we're going to look at turning this grist into wort. Alright, if you've not already, please like and subscribe, and until next time, ciao. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.